Let's get talking. So, again, dealing with the average skin tones of African Americans. So, right now, what we're looking at is the spread of genes for light skin from Anatolian farmers into Europe and mainly into Europe. Now, this particular set of genes, SLC24A5 and SLC45A2, these two genes are responsible for much of, although not all of, the light skin in European people. There were migrations, not shown on this map, of people with these genes into Africa at different times. That is the reason why now in North Africa, most of the people are light skinned, because at different times in prehistory, there were people with these genes, SLC24A5 especially, who migrated into North Africa. They also migrated into East Africa. You also have OCA2, which has an effect on eye color as well as, to a certain extent, skin color. Uh, this particular gene, OCA2. And by the way, genes are found in every population, but there are different variants or alleles. So in the case of SLC24A5, most Africans are coded for having dark skin. In the case of OCA2, OCA2 plays a role in some forms of albinism seen in Africa, and also in what is considered normal um, light skin of East Asians. East Asians actually have the same SLC24A5 gene code as Africans, but their OCA2 is different. And so that results in them having lighter skin. Now, there's this article here I will show. Show you this picture article. You can see that this individual is of a yellowish complexion. This individual is lighter, though not light skinned. New gene variants reveal evolution of human skin color. So these are both two ethnic groups found in Africa. They're both East African in terms of location. It says new gene variants reveal the evolution of human skin color. Some of the mutations responsible for lighter skin in Europeans turn out to have an ancient African origin. This is one of the things that people have a hard time wrapping their heads around when they say such things as the black man is the original man. It says, okay, most people associate Africans with dark skin, but different groups of people in Africa have almost every skin color on the planet, from the deepest black in the Dinka of South Sudan to beige in the San of South Africa. Now, researchers have discovered a handful of new gene variants responsible for this palette of tones. The study published online this week, that was actually some time ago, it was maybe, was it what date was this? Um, yeah, 2017. So this is a bit dated, but I don't know if any new information has come in. Anyways, a study published online this week in Science traces the evolution of these genes and how they traveled around the world. While the dark skin of some Pacific Islanders can be traced to Africa, gene variants from Eurasia also seem to have made their way back to Africa, and surprisingly, some of the mutations responsible for lighter skinned Europeans turn out to have an ancient African origin. So what they're saying is you had people with uh, genes for lighter skin who left Africa, and some mutations that took place outside of Africa, and then were introduced by back migrations. You can only talk of back migrations in terms of human migration because Africa is the home of our species. Researchers agree that our early Australopithecine ancestors in Africa, that's like the Lucy type beings, probably had light skin beneath hairy pelts. If you shave a chimpanzee, its skin is light, says evolutionary geneticist Sarah Tishkoff. And by the way, if you have a problem with human evolution, I don't really know what to tell you. Says evolutionary geneticist Sarah Tishkoff of the University of Pennsylvania, the lead author of the new study. If you have body hair, you don't need dark skin to protect you from ultraviolet radiation. Until recently, researchers assumed that after humans shed most body hair sometime before 2 million years ago, they quickly evolved dark skin for protection from skin cancer and other harmful effects of UV radiation. Then, when humans migrated out of Africa and headed to the far north, they evolved lighter skin as an adaptation to limited sunlight. Pale skin synthesizes more vitamin D when light is scarce. Previous research on skin color genes fit that picture. For example, a depigmentation gene called SLC24A5, what I showed on that map, linked to pale skin, swept through European populations in the last 6,000 years. But Tishkoff's team found that the story of skin color evolution isn't so black and white. Her team, including African researchers, used a light meter to measure skin reflectance in 2,092 people in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Botswana, or some people say Tanzania. They found the darkest skin in the Nilo-Saharan pastoralist populations of Eastern Africa, such as the Mersey and Surma, and the lightest skin in the San of Southern Africa, as well as many shades in between, as in the Agal people of Ethiopia. At the same time they collected blood samples for genetic studies, they sequenced more than 4 million single nucleotide polymorphisms, SNPs, places where a single letter of the genetic code varies across the genome of 1,570 of these Africans. They found 4 key areas of the genome where specific SNPs correlate with skin color. The first surprise was that SLC24A5, which swept Europe, is also common in East Africa, found in as many as half of the members of some Ethiopian groups. This variant rose 30,000 years ago and was probably brought to Eastern Africa by people migrating from the Middle East, Tishkoff says. But though many East Africans have this gene, they don't have white skin, probably because it is just one of several genes that shape their skin color. The team also found variants of 2 neighboring genes, HERK2 and OCA2, which are associated with light skin, eyes, and hair in Europeans but arose in Africa. These variants are ancient and common in the light-skinned San people. The team proposes that the variants arose in Africa as early as 1 million years ago and spread later to Europeans and Asians. Many of the gene variants that cause light skin in Europe have origins in Africa, Tishkoff says. So this indicates that the San people, and I'll show an image of the San after I finish reading this, showing this reading, that the San people, you cannot explain all of their lighter skin simply by saying that some Europeans mixed with them. Of course, now because of Europeans migrating into Africa and mixing with the Khoisan people, they do have some genes such as the SLC24A5 that were introduced by Europeans. They also have some SLC24A5 that was introduced to them through East Africans. But again, those East Africans do not have white skin because they have other genes for dark skin as well. The most dramatic discovery concerned a gene known as MFSD12. Two mutations that decrease expression of this gene were found in high frequencies in people with the darkest skin. These variants arose about half a million years ago, suggesting that human ancestors before that time may have had moderately dark skin rather than the deep black hue created today by these mutations. These same two mutations are found in Melanesians, Australian Aborigines, and some Indians, like South Asian Indians. These people may have inherited the variants from ancient migrants from Africa who followed a southern route out of East Africa along the southern coast of India to Melanesia and Australia, Tiskov says. That idea, however, counters three genetic studies that concluded last year that Australians, Melanesians, and Eurasians all descend from a single population, from a single migration out of Africa. Alternatively, this great migration may have included people carrying variants for both light and dark skin. The dark skins later were lost in Eurasians. To understand how the MFSD12 mutation helped make darker skin, the researchers reduced expression of the gene in cultured cells mimicking the action of the variants in dark skinned people. The cells produce more eumelanin, the pigment responsible for black and brown skin, hair, and eyes. The mutations also change skin color by blocking yellow pigments. When the researchers knocked out MFSD12 in zebrafish and mice, red and yellow pigments were lost, and the mice's light brown coats turned gray. This new mechanism for producing intensely dark pigmentation is really the big story, says Nina Jablonski, an anthropologist at Pennsylvania State University in State College. I could go on with this, but I'm going to now show you the Khoisan people. So Koisan. So Khoisan people are light skinned or lighter in part because of their having the mutations for light skin found in OCA2. They also do not have the mutation for MFSD12 that blocks out the red and yellow pigmentation. Now, you see this back migration, Africa. So it says out of Africa and back in. And what we see is the migration out of Africa, and we see people coming back into Africa. And some of the people who the Khoisan got their SLC24A5 gene from include the DATOGA tribe. Like, for instance, her. We can even see some similarity in phenotype with Khoisan people. Or acidic DNA. It's giving you a background. We're still maybe looking for the right. Oh no, that's not it. What I wanted. East African DNA. Khoisan. It says, okay, humanity's forgotten return to Africa revealed in DNA. They, meaning the scientists who did a study, they suggest that a subset of the Khoisan, known as the Khoi Kwadi speakers, arrived in southern Africa from East Africa about 2,200 years ago, probably it's going to say. So, who are these Khoi Kwadi? K-O. Some images. Let's see, Khoi Kwadi. Hopefully, give me an image. But anyways, we see them showing back to Africa 3,000 years ago, and then 900 to 1,800 years ago, people mixing with the Khoisan people who already had genes for light skin. And then you have this. Years ago, Igbo. K-O. Although this is from a social media forum where somebody is asking who were the ancient Igbo? Who were the ancient Igbos? Who were the ancient Igbos? I've been thinking deeply about this, somebody named Shiver said, Shiver99. And it is very clear that Igbos are very different from most West Africans in terms of looks, culture, and worldviews. I've seen people ascribe this variance to an obscure Near Eastern origin, which does not align with many Igbo clans' version of history. However, as science is becoming more reliable and accurate, it is getting clear that the homogeneous group called Igbos today are actually a mixture of several ancient groups living within tropical West Africa, giving them unique looks and culture. This is evident from their oral histories and DNA. Eventually, Essentially, there have always been an ancient indigenous Igbo group that lived within the borders of Igbo land. However, the regular intermarriages with other West African groups caused the appearance of the modern day Igbo, much like modern day Mexicans who differ significantly from their ancient Aztec ancestors but still retain many similarities. I will support this with some information that I have been collecting. The person says, so now uh, DNA samples from Igbo state that they have ancestry from the Khoisan-like people, dating back to around 9,000 years ago. Coincidentally, the oldest sign of settlement in Igbo land is also around 9,000 years old. This explains the yellowish skin that many Igbos have, ranging from light olive to a more ruddy sandy color that people falsely attribute to Near Eastern admixture, as well as the small almond or slanted eyes I have often seen in many Igbos. A genetic, this is from a tweet somebody had from a um, another site called Upuru. A genetic analysis of Igbo samples from the African Genome Variation Project reveals that the Igbo people may have mixed with populations similar to the Khoisan around 9,000 years ago, a people living today in southern Africa who have the oldest genetic lineage in the world. So, because African Americans have some Igbo and neighboring admixture, this may, I'm not going to just automatically say it does, but it may explain why some of us have complexions similar to Khoisan people. I would say that definitely this is not the average African American skin tone, but it may be one explanation aside from European admixture for why we would have some of us, like for example, Will Smith might have skin this color. It could also be a combination of factors. Also, I have noticed that Igbo men are much broader and muscular than the majority, pretty sure they went to say than, the majority of Nigerian men. In fact, it's gotten to the point that any brown skinned and powerfully built man is assumed to be Igbo, not just in Nigeria, but in other West African countries as well. Igbo men also tend to have broader and more chiseled faces, unlike the round, soft, or thinner faces that most are used to seeing in other West African groups. This is due to the contributions from Igbo's Bakoid ancestors. They tend to have very strong, wiry bodies and broader faces, as well as bronze or reddish brown skin, as opposed to black or very, very dark, black or very, very dark. These features can be seen in the Igbo man at the very bottom. So this is showing you someone from the Baka, and I would say that maybe the average African American skin tone is probably about this color. And two Baka people, and they contrast it with a Igbo man down here. Uh, those were some of the groups I believe from the first Igbos. However, Igbos are still a variety of several groups. The next group is an immigrating group, which I call the Nakites because they are believed to be descendants of the Nok or Nok. This was called This was called from the Nok expansion theory, which states that the expansion of the Volta Niger YEA groups, Yoruba, Igbo, Akoko, Edo, Igbo groups into southern Nigeria began due to the mysterious decimation of the advanced Nok civilization. This group immigrated to Igbo land around 2 to 3,000 years ago, most likely from small families every so often at first to a full-blown great immigration when the Nok civilization ended. Generations of immigration and population growth allowed this group to achieve some dominance in Igbo land in terms of their language and culture, which is the reason that Igbo speak a language that is classified as Volta Niger today, Niger or Niger today. And this is an image of the Nok people. It's hard to tell what the original Nokites would have looked like because their other alleged descendants, other YEA groups, are also presumed to have mixed with other indigenous tropical West African groups. But perhaps the most likely is that they must have looked close to modern day Upper West Africans, tall, lean, and more often not either very dark or almost pitch black. This explains why many Igbos are very tall as well as slender, especially the Enugu and Anambra regions. So this is showing you some people from Upper West Africa, and we see that we see slender and very dark-skinned people. This information is corroborated by oral history of some Igbo groups. It is if you ask Igbo clans of their origins, you will hear generally of two things: we were always here, we sprouted from the ground, or God planted us here, which would make sense for a people with an over 9,000 year long history in a place. Or you will hear variations of we came from the north. We came from the north, east slash west, and brought some sort of civilization to the aboriginal people of the land, either kingship or some sort of hierarchical system. Okay, so now going back, just to show you something else. Let's see. What am I going to do with this? Miss Nigeria. Lipstick Alley. So this image is what I would say is average skin tone for African Americans. Although these women are all Nigerian, Nigeria can be used as a proxy for the African background of probably most African Americans. I don't know if these women would be considered dark skinned. I would probably say that, yeah, they probably would be considered dark skinned or brown. I don't know. But this is what you're most likely to run into. This is what I would call average. I would call this like average dark. You have darker, but this here or this, these two, and keep it in mind that these pictures were taken, I'm pretty sure they were taken indoors. In lower lighting, of course, people are going to look darker than they are. or but this is like, yeah, I would say this is average. And for now, I think this will be all. Thank you.